What is up? What is up? Earnestly podcast here, coming to you Monday, August 20. Every time I do the date, I forget last second. I really should make sure when I'm starting a podcast, make sure I have the date in mind before I actually start hitting play, because, it throws me off my game. August 24th, 2020, on Earnestly podcast. Glad to have you guys with us. With me, us, it's us, it's me really. Here, in the my office here. So what's going on? Nothing is. What a start to the show. God, what's wrong with me today? Okay, so today's podcast, I'm probably having, I'm just not gonna give a shit about what I'm gonna talk about today. I am mainly going to recap this weekend's pro wrestling events. Summerslam, of course, yesterday. Summerslam, a really good event in my opinion. Really good event, in my opinion. Like, it's not Donald Trump now. And NXT Takeover from Saturday night. Lots of things happening. And the only reason why I'm even pushing to do this right now on this feed is because on my wrestling podcast, Take 3 Wrestling, with my friends Mike and Joe, Mike Bernier and Joe Lopez, we were going to recap both shows last night on the podcast. However, our good friend Joe did not watch any pro wrestling this weekend, any of the shows. He obviously had friends in town, for what he told us on the show. And that, it's his birthday, by the way, too, so happy birthday to Joe as well. But as a result of him having family and friends, or friends in town, whatever it is, he was able to watch the shows. And furthermore, he did not want any spoilers. So we were not able to do the original episode. We did a show, but we just did pretty much a whole nostalgic show for that matter. You can check out that podcast. It came out pretty good last minute considering the situation. That's Take 3 Wrestling podcast on any podcast platform catcher of your choice. But that being said, we didn't do that. So as a result, I feel compelled to get these takes out, because I have all these takes in my mind, in my head, for the last 24 hours, and since I wasn't able to discuss it on that show, hell, we're doing this show then, Earnestly podcast. So why not? Okay, so as I bring up my notes here, about this stuff, give me 1 second. I'm doing this on live podcast. I'm talking and trying to fill time up. I guess we can start with Takeover first from Saturday. Solid show. I'll give it a B minus. It wasn't a bad show. Wasn't great. Wasn't the best Takeover I ever watched. Now, granted, I've only watched, was it my fourth one? I saw my first Takeover I watched in real time was last November. Then I saw one in February. Then, so it's the fourth one. That's why, because there's one in June as well, too. In your house one, from the summer. Early in the summer, rather. Hold on real quick. That's right here. Okay, so a couple of things to talk about here when it comes to Takeover. First off, the big story of the show is Keith Lee losing his NXT title that he just won only 2 months ago at a Great American Bash from Adam Cole to Karrion Kross. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, it wasn't necessarily shocking, considering Karrion Kross, the way he's being booked, the way his character, him and I think it's his wife, Scarlett, they are first off, Karrion Kross' presentation, number one, is incredible. It's probably one of the top 2 or 3 best entrances in all of the WWE universe. I'm talking about all 3 brands: SmackDown, Raw, and NXT. So they're building this Karrion Kross character to be a monster. It kind of reminds me of Brock Lesnar, the way he was booked in 2002, where he came out of nowhere and just dominated from the word go, and then beat The Rock at SummerSlam in 2002. So it's not. So this is not really necessarily a shock, but also it makes sense when you hear the news 24 hours later that Keith Lee's being called up to Raw. He's actually, as I'm recording the show, Raw is on. So, which again, you guys know when I don't watch any other than the pay-per-views. I don't watch any pro wrestling live. I wait till the next day because I don't want to watch 3 hours of Raw. I'd rather watch the edited version on Hulu, which is the day after. Same thing with NXT, and same thing with Dynamite too, for the most part, on AEW and SmackDown as well. But Keith Lee is now being called to Raw, which I'm happy for the guy. Obviously, but I'm pretty bummed for NXT, at least for the brand in the short term, because yes, they've always recovered when it comes to, obviously NXT has been a development brand since its inception 10 years ago. There was the thought that last year when they moved over to USA Network after being on WWE Network, doing the weekly shows on there, that maybe there are, if not on par with Raw and SmackDown, then certainly close to be on par with Raw and SmackDown. But that isn't the case. Unless this is because of COVID, things have changed. But a lot of top tier talent has left. Not want to say left, but been called up, if you will, to the big shows, Raw and SmackDown, in the last 8 months. Shayna Baszler has been one, Matt Riddle, obviously, Bianca Belair, and now Keith Lee. And I'm sure there's more names that are going to be sifted out as well, too. Like I said, they have the ability to recover, because obviously, if it's a development brand, the idea is to build these characters up to become bigger stars on Raw and SmackDown. The thing is, and this is coming from somebody who has not watched NXT long. I've barely watched NXT for a year. I'm barely been a fan for a year, and honestly less than that. I really started watching NXT religiously probably late fall last year. But I can't. I'd be lying to you if I told you that it does. The roster right now, freeze frame right this second, that the NXT roster feels kinda plain right now. Like Keith Lee's special. Now obviously you still got Undisputed Era there. Adam Cole and the boys still there, although there's been rumors about them being called up probably at any point. I guess right now that's probably put on hold now. Certainly if they get called up now, then it's really going to hurt the brand. At least in the short term. But it does feel kind of stale. It feels kind of plain right now. And certainly we'll get more talent, as it goes throughout the the coming months and weeks, whatever. But I don't know. I just a lot of the guys I got invested into, like I got invested into Bianca Belair, and now she's gone. I got invested to Shayna Baszler, she's gone. Matt Riddle, I was a big fan of Matt Riddle, he's gone. Now could it be maybe NXT UK that we're here? I saw a thing on the network that they're back to doing shows in September. So maybe that could be something where they could use some of that talent and bring it to NXT. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, Keith Lee being called up. The NXT right now in this moment feels a little bit plain. Now, Tommaso Ciampa's come back this Sunday. This was Wednesday rather, to the show. His first appearance in quite a while since losing Karrion Kross back in June. So we'll see what happens there. Not to take away from NXT Takeover 30. I was never really a Damian Priest fan. I'm happy for him he won the North American title in that very entertaining 5-way ladder match against Johnny Gargano, against Velveteen Dream versus Bronson Reed, and who am I missing here? Oh yeah, Cameron Grimes. Cameron Grimes. Always get him shit. I got something from him in a second. I'm happy he won the match. I was never been, like I said, never been a big Damian Priest fan, but glad he won the match. Glad he won. I'm happy to see what we can do with him. He's been there for a little while, and like I said, he has a nice presentation too. Also, his entrance is really really cool. But like I said, I've never been a huge fan. We'll see what happens though. I can always be turned. I can always be turned around. We'll see what happens. I thought Bronson Reed came out pretty. Looked like $1 million too in the aftermath as well too. I thought he looked really good. Velveteen Dream, of course, he's great in the ring. But what are you doing with him now? All the alleged legal troubles he's having right now. Of course, we'll see what happens there. Gargano, is he gonna get called up at some point? Is Gargano is he NXT forever, or was he somebody that'll get called up at some point? I think his value was probably better in NXT anyway. But again, if the goal here, if NXT is still a developmental league, a developmental brand for that matter, then he deserves to get called up. But but in my opinion, he'll get lost in the shuffle in the main roster. This is my opinion. But yeah. Speaking of Cameron Grimes, as I mentioned, I have a confession. I've been saying for a long time that he's one of the most annoying characters in pro wrestling, in my opinion, Cameron Grimes. But I kind of hate him less now. I kind of hate him less today than I did before the show. I don't know. Maybe he grew on me. Maybe talking to some of my wrestling buddies in the last couple of days and sort of give me more perspective on his character. Because to me, he had he had go away heat. And go away heat to me is like someone you don't want to be around. It's one thing to be a heel, but you appreciate what they're doing, like Randy Orton and those kind of guys. Even Baron Corbin. You appreciate the character and what they're doing and the art of it. And there's guys that are heels, but also heels and annoying, and you don't want nothing to do with them. Period. You don't even want to see them. And that was Cameron Grimes for me for a long time. But I think now, I gained a new perspective on Cameron Grimes. Maybe a new set of goggles. I don't know. I think now it was a little salvageable. And I think seeing him in that match, in the five-way ladder match, I think a little respect for him a little bit. A little respect for the guy. So, my last takeaway here from NXT TakeOver, honestly, I'm a little stunned. I shouldn't be, I guess, but I'm a little stunned. Holy shit. Pat McAfee was amazing in that match that lost to Adam Cole. It doesn't even matter if he lost the match. He was amazing. Unbelievable. And then there was some rumor I saw on Twitter earlier that supposedly that both McAfee and Adam Cole had little time to rehearse the match. You know, so if that's actually true, given what we saw, that should be in the conversation of match of the year if you use that narrative as well too. That's really incredible. If they had no time to rehearse that match, that's awesome. It makes me wonder too, Pat McAfee, you know, is this a one-off? Will he see him in the ring again? I hope we see him in the ring again, obviously. But he was great. And by the way, Adam Cole also looked great as well. I mean, Adam Cole's obviously phenomenal. But the fact that those two worked well, those two worked really well together. I was really, really stunned. And you know how McAfee, you know, performed. Like he could be a bit much too. Also the whole yelling and stuff. But no, he was great. I enjoyed it. The build up to the match was great, and I don't know. We'll see what happens. Maybe they do more with McAfee going forward. I don't know. I'm really curious as to the direction of him moving forward. All right. As for SummerSlam last night, which I watched the first 2 hours with my son, and then he had to put him to sleep because he had school today. First day of school and virtual. That was kind of yeah. Well, let me say this much. My concern, and I think on the last podcast, I discussed this about, you know, looking forward to school and virtual learning, and him having to be on the computer for 7 hours, regardless of being on the computer, you know, not being physically, so it's still same hours, 8 to 3. I thought from what mom told me today, obviously, and from what my wife, you know, what she said today, also at work today, she said he did fine. I kept saying on the podcast last week that my concern was really more so with the 3-year-old Logan in how he reacts, because, you know, we had to put Eli in his room for, you know, X amount of hours a day to do schoolwork, and you had to separate the two kids. But yeah, anyway, so he watched the first couple hours of SummerSlam with me. So anyway, SummerSlam, no surprise, Asuka won one belt. You know, remember Asuka was slated to fight Bayley first, and then Sasha Banks last. And you know, the one thing I got wrong was that I thought she would have beaten Bayley and then lost to Sasha. But you know, all the way around, Bayley won her match against Asuka, but then Asuka pinned Sasha Banks. Yeah. We'll see where this whole Golden Role Models thing goes. Like, I mean, you start to see the little teases of dissension between, you know, Bayley and Sasha. It's actually a nice little slow build. I like what's going on here. You know, Bayley not helping Sasha win her match, but the other way around happened in the first match. You know, Asuka's one of the MVPs of the COVID era, of the no crowd era. She's been phenomenal. I've said that on Twitter yesterday too. I think Asuka and Bayley are my two favorite women's wrestlers right now in all of pro wrestling. You know, they've been excellent. Let's see. The Mandy Rose Sonya Deville match, honestly, a little underwhelming. But, you know, given the events that happened last week, you know, the real events with Sonya Deville, in the attempted kidnapping that she went through, thank God she was nothing happened with that in the end. You know, they got to pass for me, honestly. I'm not going to give them shit for this match. You know, and apparently Mandy Rose was also in the house at the same time as Sonya Deville. So she was, you know, for what if the rumors are true, she was also part of what happened in the situation. You know, the stipulation originally was the hair versus hair, but that was changed on SmackDown on Friday to lose the WWE. And I'm wondering if, given the events of last week, because Mandy won, if the stipulation change was in reaction to the events last week, and maybe Sonya decided she wants to leave, take a leave of absence, whatever, because she's still part of WWE, from what we understand. She's still under contract, from what we understand. She's right. So the way I would interpret that is that she takes some time off from the company to kind of maybe, and it has probably something to do with what happened last week. So my thoughts and prayers, of course, obviously to her. Hopefully she can come back and kick ass. Cause I think she's someone I've been saying. I think even GW Gross mentioned on this pod, a while back, that she is someone who has a future, who could be someone who can really do some serious damage and really be pushed to the moon. In the company. So we'll see what happens there. Solid debut. I should go further than the solid. Great debut by Dominic Mysterio. Great match against Seth Rollins. Great story in the ring. Obviously involving his dad, Rey Mysterio. Obviously Seth Rollins had Buddy Murphy or Murphy in his corner. And then of course Dominic's mother was involved somewhat. She was actually being at top of the ramp, if you will. That was great. It was great psychology. Great match. Great storytelling. And it got me thinking, actually, after Seth winning this match. And again, I'm still relatively new to this era. As I said, I've been watching, the new stuff for the last year or so. It's 14 months. But watching, the last 6-7 years of looking back at, past SummerSlams and whatnot. Are we sure Seth Rollins isn't Mr. SummerSlam right now? Because he's had some really big moments on this show in the last 6 years. Obviously his win against Cena, his win last year against Lesnar, this one against Dominic. He's had some really big moments, honestly, on this show. And it makes you wonder, are we sure that could we obviously call Shawn Michaels Mr. WrestleMania, and it's deserved, obviously, because he's been some of the greatest matches in the history of the company has been because of HBK. Are we sure that Seth Rollins isn't Mr. SummerSlam now? Because I think if you look at some of his resume from his SummerSlams in the last decade, it's right up there with some of the greatest to ever do it. Just saying. Impactful matches last 10 years. Something to think about. Might be something I actually this could be a possible topic on the Takes Wrestling podcast this coming Sunday when we record. We'll see. All right, match of the night for me, it was of course Randy Orton, Drew McIntyre. Loved the slow pace of the match. Very old school. Love that Drew actually got a championship moment at the end. That he wasn't able to get at WrestleMania back in April. I'm stunned because I thought Drew would continue being the champion. But the way they were building Randy Orton the last month or so, especially this last month, knocking out Big Show, knocking out HBK, knocking out Ric Flair, with that kick, the Legend Killer thing, it kind of set the table for him getting his 13th, I think his 13th or 14th championship, with WWE. So the fact that, I said on the show back on Thursday that the idea is to bring Drew to Randy's level, because Randy he's a legend. He's a made man already. Randy Orton is a Hall of Famer. He could end it right now. He's a Hall of Famer. First ballot. Boom. And here you go. But the fact that, you're trying to build stars there and you're trying to bring Drew to Randy's level. This is Drew's first title reign. And the way that the match went too and the way it ended, Randy didn't get buried. Getting a quick roll up on Randy at the end. I mean, I'm sure we could do this again. Maybe at Payback, maybe the next review after Payback. I don't know. There's some meat in the bonus rivalry, I think, still. And I think, Drew it makes Drew bigger and better now because he beat the legendary Randy Orton. Especially Randy Orton having his best run. So, yeah. A great match. I thought the slow pace was great. Old school, just the great psychology, the storytelling. I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in the high flying and the spots and whatnot that we forget about the art of pro wrestling, and this match was kind of like that. Now, admittedly, never cared for the Bray Wyatt, Braun Strowman, the Fiend, Strowman feud. Didn't care. I know that there's history there. Didn't really care for it necessarily. That said, I'm really glad the title's off of Braun Strowman. No, nothing against him. No, it's not a knock at all. He just never for me pushed the needle as a champion, and we already know why he was. Booked as with the belt on the waist because of obviously Roman Reigns, not being able to wrestle at WrestleMania due to COVID, due to the, COVID-19 threat, and him, of course, just recovering from leukemia about a year before that. So he was Braun Strowman was pretty much a place-former champion anyway. We all knew that at some point he'd lose the belt at some point. But the fact that Roman Reigns came back at the end after Fiend winning the match, we never saw it coming. But Roman Reigns jumping to Fiend at the end of the match didn't stun me at all, honestly. Because one of the things I said, I don't think I said on the show, but I said it in private with friends of mine. Talking about the SummerSlam, is that because of the SummerSlam going into the Thunderdome and being booked in the arena at Amway, that it opened the door for a lot of different possibilities, because now you have the space now to do this kind of stuff. And one of the things I was telling some of my friends was that Roman Reigns returning could be something, that can be booked now. If he's comfortable, come back to the ring with everything going on with COVID. Also, are we sure that Roman Reigns isn't a heel? Because some of the actions he did, he beat up both Braun Strowman and the Fiend. Are we sure he's not a heel, or at least a tweener? I don't know. Something to that effect. I don't know. But it was a good surprise the way it was impactful. By the way, I love the Thunderdome. I love the way they always made improvements from SmackDown Friday when they debuted it to SummerSlam on Sunday. It's great. And I was telling somebody today too. I was talking about a friend of mine who's not really a current wrestling fan, but knows the business and whatever. And I was telling him, it's funny, like, say what about people watch wrestling, say what about Vince McMahon, but the fact of the matter is this is a guy who gives a absolute shit about his company. He lives, breathes, and he just lives and breathes WWE, and he cares about his product, how it looks, how it's presented, and the fact that the WWE goes up the way to do something like this, trying to stay ahead of the curb, even in a time like this, trying to stay entertaining, you have to give him credit. You have to give the people, the front office, but especially Vince McMahon, because that starts with Vince, and Vince has always been this way, giving a shit about his product. So, I'll give this entire show a B+. I thought it was a really good show. Like I said, the only match that really didn't hit my expectation was Mandy and Sonya, but again, they got a pass because of the events that happened last week. I'm trying to miss some other stuff here, but these are the things that came out that stood out for me the most last night, as well as Saturday night with Takeover. So that's that. So I guess that's just my quick SummerSlam and Takeover and NXT 30 preview on the podcast. Expected to do another pod sometime on definitely on Thursday night. We're gonna be doing my our annual NFL over-unders win totals with Zach Degenerate and Chris Charismatic. Maybe another pod before then. We'll see, another solo pod before then. I got a couple things I want to get off my chest, but for now, this will do. This will do for now. So again, on Twitter at EJChristian7, EarnestChristian.com or EarnestChristian.substack.com, my newsletter as well. Until then, stay up, stay safe, and love you guys. Take care and see ya.